Hey, yep, okay, works. All right, welcome everyone. I'm excited for this webinar. This is season 2, episode 2 of the Valenta Insight series. And we have with us Rich Burley, who I met through Valenta. We're both managing partners at Valenta, which is a digital transformation and IT consulting organization. And Rich is also the managing partner and CEO of the Peer Digital Advisory Services. So you've been doing that for quite some time now, and you were a former CIO and EVP at BD, which is a huge multi-billion-dollar Fortune 500 organization, and you're also a board member of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of New Jersey as well. And yeah, I'm excited to introduce you to everyone. And I know you prepared a lot of value for everyone who's watching. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks, Davidson, and I appreciate the introduction. And what we're going to do today is talk about everybody's favorite. You may hate the topic because you've been inundated. You may like the topic, but what I'd like to do during the conversation that we have over the next hour is put out a definition of AI, talk a little bit about it. And if you're thinking, is this conversation for me, we're going to do some, what I would say, housekeeping things up front, but then really talk about what it looks like for an organization to be prepared for AI. What are some of those things that they need to think about, they need to focus on through all levels of the organization, because in order to make the changes that are implied through bringing on these technologies, you're going to need support from the CEO through every level of the organization. So for an agenda, just to set the outline for today, we're going to talk about what is it, what it is, what it's not, why you should care about it. It's not just about CEOs and should they care about it, but it's about you as a member of an organization. And this isn't necessarily a corporation. It could be a not-for-profit. It could be really any type of organization, because this technology is what I would say seeping in all over, and people are using it. And it's actually very interesting because you've got the organizations pushing it, but also people are bringing it in of their own accord to make their jobs easier, to make their lives more productive. And we'll talk about that as we get into the conversation. We'll talk about some of the implications and specifically about ChatGPT and how quickly it's been adopted. Talk a little bit about some of the areas for automation, some of the challenges around adopting it. Talk about some of the barriers, and then really get into just some key takeaways. And I'm hopeful, as we go through the conversation today, that we get some questions from the audience and have a little bit of interaction, because that'll make it go a lot better. And I'd really like to just hear from people on their thoughts and what they're seeing and how their organizations are approaching this topic. So what is AI? So as we look at this slide, there's two pieces to it. The very top part is a direct response to a prompt that I put into ChatGPT. And I asked ChatGPT, what is AI? And I'll let you read the definition, but it's a very what I would say textbook definition. I also asked ChatGPT what it is and what it is not, and I didn't use those responses because, again, it was very textbook. And I think as you use the tools and as you start to play around with it and work through different prompts based on your experience, you'll start to see where the boundaries are of the technology today. And so the what it is and what it is not are actually my responses based on my experience of being in industry for over 35 years. it's a hot topic. And the second bullet under what it is actually super important, because all of this technology it's a tool, right? And it's a tool that allows businesses and organizations to solve specific problems. And I think all of us, when we see something new, whether it's AI or another piece of technology or something that can help us, in our personal life, we're drawn to those shiny objects because we think they can benefit us. And again, I always, think about tools in the context of really four things: people, process, technology, of which it is technology, but I also include data. And as we get into the conversation today, we're going to spend time talking about data and things that organizations should consider as they're evaluating AI and some of the technologies that are out there that can make impacts to their business. I would also say, the last bullet on what it is, it's evolving. I was talking, a couple weeks ago to a friend of mine who is a former CIO for a large pharmaceutical company, and he's probably one of the smartest people that I know. And he already is feeling like he's out of touch based on the pace of how technology is changing. And I think that's a challenge at many levels, is how do I stay relevant as a, whether you're senior or whatever level you're at, how do I stay relevant based on what's going on? And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the conversation. But that is, I think, a concern for many people. And and it's conversations like this, it's conversations with peers within your organization, and just keeping those connections to people who are in the industry and who are aware of these technologies, and also play around with it. Like I said, I've been playing around with ChatGPT, Copilot, Google's AI, Genesis, and there's a lot of great tools out there. And they do have limitations, but you can see where some of this is going and how it will positively impact businesses. From a standpoint of what it's not a magic bullet that's going to solve all your problems. If you have bad processes in your organization, you're still going to have bad processes. If you've got bad data that needs to be cleaned and scrubbed, you're probably still going to have bad data. And it's definitely not a quick fix if you've got aging systems, and things that you need to address. But hopefully people can start to see some of this as a call to action to really get after some of the things that they're seeing and some of the challenges that they have, so that as these tools evolve, that you can really take advantage of them, bringing them into your organization. And the last point really is AI is not going away. And it's a broad category. It covers a lot of things. I've got probably 3 or 4 pages of definitions that are not included in today's presentation that I'll probably post separately as a one-page handout, where you get into generative AI, conversational AI, and things like that. And again, you can look all of that up or query your favorite AI tool. But again, AI is here. It's definitely something that is going rapidly, and it's impacting organizations, and it's exciting, right? It's the old curse, right? May you live in interesting times, and I think AI is definitely at the forefront of those times.
So it sounds like you experiment with a lot of different tools, and it's hard to know which one. Um, what do you suggest in terms of like where to start? Is it just being, like you said, being curious? Like how much time and energy do you spend doing it? And can, like, what are some of the things that you're noticing? Like, what are the differences between ChatGPT versus Google's AI, and do you notice there's a lot of differences, or as of right now they're all very similar?
So one of the things I've seen, and this is probably a small difference. But when I want to do something and create tabular information, so if I've got, I'll ask maybe a couple prompts in Chat GPT, but then I'll bring the output of that and I'll ask a question to Google Gemini, and I'll say, organize that into a table with, this dimension on the x-axis, this dimension on the y. I found that Google is better at organizing and in presenting back tabular information versus ChatGPT as an example. I think ChatGPT, and again, so everybody understands, I'm using ChatGPT 4.0, which is the paid version. So again, it's like anything else, you get more feature functionality. One of the things I really like with ChatGPT is I'll ask it to create pictures, I'll ask it to create graphics, and it does a good job of, and in some of my presentations, I'm using that, and I think it does a good job there. I've also paid for and playing around with Microsoft Copilot, and I think as they open that up more, it's going to be really exciting. My advice to people that are organizations that are considering Copilot is clean up your SharePoints. SharePoint is the core of where it's going to pull information, a SharePoint or OneDrive, wherever your information is housed. And so if you've got a lot of, old stuff that you're not using, it's going to pull that in, and you may not want that part of what you're, pulling back and displaying.
That's helpful. It sounds like the AI, because it works off of data, is only as good as how accurate and how relevant the data is, right? So if it's stuff from 20 years ago, then maybe that's probably not the most accurate or what you want to be spending your time managing, right? So just clean everything up, because it'll just save you a lot of time in the long run.
Yeah, and I remember, at one of the organizations I worked for, we had a ton of, paper files at Iron Mountain, and we went through all of the boxes because, we were spending a lot of money with Iron Mountain, and we found all sorts of, what I would call junk. We had one of the bankers' boxes, we had, somebody's work boots. So we were storing that and paying for it for years and years. And it's the same thing with your information. You've got to clean it up. And, what I'm hoping is, organizations use, this as a call to action to, really start cleaning up, their file structure, their files, their information, because, that's going to be a disabler to really, maximizing the use and the value of what AI and what these tools can bring. And again, there's things that you can do, but it's hard work and discipline, and that's the challenge, right? Is everybody likes the shiny objects, but nobody, people tend to shy away from sometimes the hard work that you have to do in order to make the Ferrari run at peak efficiency.
Yeah, it's just being prepared, and instead of being reactive, like proactively, like, hey, we know that with AI we're gonna have to clean, so why not do it now, versus later when there's so much data that you might be overpaying for things that you probably don't need anymore.
Right. And again, I've, having been a former CIO, I mean, I can tell you, going through some of the old files, you've got 20-year-old files that people haven't touched in years and years and years. But when you say, hey, can we delete this? Especially, and I'll pick on the finance and accounting community, they're like, well, we might need that someday. I'm like, well, when was the last? It shows that you haven't looked at the file in 18 years. Well, we might need it though. And so, those are some of the challenges that you're going to have to go through, as part of this. And like I said, it's not the most exciting element of some of this work, but I think to get the value, and people are spending a lot of money on these technologies, some of this is about fundamentals. And that'll be, part of the conversation as we talk about organizational readiness is, are you doing the fundamentals that put you in position to really, maximize the value that these tools and these technologies can bring to your organization. So, talking about why a CEO or really why anybody should care about these technologies, they're already starting to transform and disrupt business models. There was just a lawsuit I filed today by Scarlett Johansson because she thinks that the AI voice that ChatGPT is using sounds awfully close to her voice, and so you could see it potentially disrupting the creative arts, disrupting the legal industry, and there's just so many different places where it has the potential to disrupt. And it was funny because I was a couple weeks ago I was watching the movie that had the folks that were the computers for NASA. I forget what the name of it is, but they were at that point. People were doing the computations by hand and in their heads, and required a lot of math, and they were bringing in mainframes and how disruptive the mainframe was. And this isn't really not dissimilar to that. Is you've got new technologies, they're disrupting the existing work environment, and it's you can't stop it, and it's going to improve efficiencies. And I think people who understand that and who see it and can adapt to the new reality, you're never going to be able to go back to what was. And the name of the movie is Hidden Figures. And it's a really, really good movie if you haven't seen it. But again, it's how do we, embrace this? How do we look at what the new, those new opportunities are, new revenue streams? And I think it's going to create opportunities for smaller businesses, to really, grow and expand, whether it's, software, whether it's, again, cleansing data, improving, existing processes or totally rebuilding new processes. This is really, exciting, and it's a great time. I think the last point on this slide is a super important one. Your employees, right? If you're a business owner, if you're business leaders, are already bringing the technology into the organization. They're using ChatGPT. People are very, very smart. And if there are tools, if there are things that can make their life easier, that can make their job easier, that can make, how they work quicker so that they have more personal time or more recreational time, they're going to do it. And so it's already happening. And the reality is many organizations just don't have a handle on the extent of what's really coming into the organization and how it's manifesting. And so, again, back to being curious, back to really understanding, what's going on. These are, things that hopefully, lead to a call to action for organizations of all sizes. And it's going to happen, and people are going to do it. But you need to get ahead of the curve on this and really understand the impact and what's going on today.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? I mean, people are using it, right? So I'm sure some companies don't even have any policies in regards to it, right? So just being thoughtful and proactive about it, and being innovative, staying ahead of the curve instead of being reactive and thinking about it. So I'm sure every organization is thinking about that now. Like, hey, how do we limit, or like some companies will probably limit it, but it's like, hey, people are using it regardless. So either we invite it or we're afraid of it. What are you going to choose?
Yeah, and what I've seen, again, it's the first company I worked for was United Parcel Service, and at UPS we used to say, the best decision is the right decision. The second best decision is the wrong decision. The worst decision is no decision. And so a lot of organizations, I think, are waiting on the sidelines to see what happens as it relates to AI. And for me, that's a bad decision. Even if you make a decision that may not be a perfect decision, it's better to have a pathway for your organization about this than to be sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens, because it's just changing and it's moving so quickly. So, it's pretty crazy to really understand that Chat GPT was adopted by 100 million users in 2 months. I mean, and you look at this chart, and again, this is just one of the technologies, right? This is, there's many others that are very similar. And so you've got a huge interest, you've got a huge take up of, just, the population of leveraging this tool. I checked over the weekend, I think there's around 180, 190 million users right now. So the curve is, slowed down a little bit. But it's still significant considering, it was only introduced, I want to say, in fall of 22. And so we're still, right around 18 months, and you can imagine it's going to be probably north of 200 million users by the, the end of the 2-year period for them. That's crazy. And so you can see, that people are curious, that people, are getting, some type of benefit. And it's going to turn from a curiosity into a tool, because people are experimenting with it and figuring how to make, how to use it more effectively. And again, some of the bonus material we talk about some of the uses, but that's even expanding. And that's why you want to start, making yourself and making your organization smart about this now, is so that you go with it as the technology evolves and matures.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. It's even with TikTok, like you said, like on this graph, 9 months. I mean, that was groundbreaking. So the fact that it's a pretty telling graph, and it really shows, like you said, any people are smart, employees are smart, right? If this is something that is helping them, they're going to use it whether you like it or not. So it's interesting how crazy, it makes you curious, like what the next thing is going to be that will even surpass like less than 2 months. But
Oh yeah.
this
Well,
beginning.
and again, the best defense is a good offense. So what is your strategy as it relates to this? Because it's like I said, it's seeping in, and the organizations I probably worry the most about are in that 100 million to 2 billion, because they are, they're grinding, they may be manufacturers, they may be, service companies, and there's a large opportunity for them to change and disrupt, some of the bigger organizations that may move slower. And I think, speed is going to be an important aspect of this. It doesn't necessarily have to be making perfect decisions. It's making generally right and good decisions over a period of time, because this is going to be about speed, I think. Let's see. Let's go right. So, we talk about Chat GPT, which is, a combination of a generative and conversational AI tool. Now we shift gears a little bit and talking a little bit about AI automation. And, again, this is just another dimension. And AI it's one of those categories of tools that, has a broad set of tools, right? And so, AI automation is part of that. And this really talks about, where in an organization, some of the biggest impacts are felt. And I can speak specifically to this, based at my time with Becton Dickinson, because we were using a lot of automation tools in our shared service centers. And it was a great partnership between the technology organization and the shared service organization, to really, put these tools in place. And it was the shared service associates, in our centers in Chile and Poland that really, made the difference. And, I think a lot of times people, get concerned with, well, what is the impact to the jobs? What's the impact to the people, and how does it, change their lives? And I can tell you from firsthand experience that the folks in the centers actually embraced the technology, and they embraced the change. Our biggest challenge was doing more work because we were bringing in more work from other parts of the organization, doing more work with the same people. And the work that we were automating was horrible work. I mean, it was not fun. It was very repetitive. It was not rewarding to the associates. And so they embraced the tools. They actually pushed us, which was great. And again, I think it's a testament to the people in the centers. They really cared about what they did. Our shared service leaders had, created a great culture. And so, that's really what you're looking for, in your organization, is people, that are going to take this and run with it. Because, if it's just, a top-down push, which is important, you're only going to get so far. And the key, to any of these transformational efforts is, driving it also, what I like to say is you need to drive it from the top down and the bottom up at the same time, and meet in the middle to drive these changes. And, we were able to make, a significant impact, and really, change the work, but in a way, that the people, in the centers drove it. And that's what worked for us.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I see that. Yeah, the administrative, the office, right? That seems like the most illegal. So anything that's like repetitive. Um, do you feel like even the stuff at the bottom of this, like production, maintenance, repair, do you think, healthcare support, like those? It seems like that's obviously just going to keep trending to the right. Um, yeah, like
Yeah, I mean, what's gonna it's just gonna keep moving, right? And it starts with, leadership and their desire to want to change, right? Whether it's saving money, whether it's, increasing your top line, trying to, free up capital, whatever it is that is your, part of your strategy, right? And again, another important point is all of this needs to be tied in with your strategy. You shouldn't be doing any of this just to do it. Obviously, you want to make sure this is all linked to business outcomes and specific goals and objectives that you're driving as an organization. But it's also a little bit, leader dependent. So, is your leader, in IT, helping drive some of this? Is your leader, in, wherever, pick a row on the graph? Are they behind it? And what happens is you start to see that those leaders are the ones that are being successful, right? And it is a competition. And so who understands, how to make those impacts, and they're typically the ones that rise up through the organization, and the people in the other departments start to say, oh wow, that's what I need to start doing in order to catch up or be at par with my peers. So we're starting now to pivot into talking about, some of the challenges for adopting it, and then some of the things that you need to do in order to be ready for AI as an organization. And so we've talked about some of these, specifically around the technology. You've got a lot of choices, almost too many choices. And there's a book I reference by Shana Iyengar. I want to say it's the art of choosing. And when people are presented with too many choices, they choose nothing. And so I think there's some of that that's going on. And I think as organizations trying to help businesses understand this, we've got to do a better job of what I would say boxing out choices for leaders. So, you've got either A or B. And I again try to do it in a way where those are points on a continuum so that they can, make hybrid choices based on some of those, options that you've laid out. Because again, if there's too many choices, people just they choose nothing. And so we've got to do a better job of simplifying the complex, right? I had an old boss. He used to use this line all the time. He goes, Rich, he says, there's two types of people in the world. He goes, there's simplifiers and there's complexifiers. And, we as, leaders in industry need to help our clients and our customers. We need to simplify things. And it's not that they're not smart people. They're extremely smart. It's just they haven't taken the time to focus on this and understand it in the context of their business. And so our job is to not dumb it down, but to present it in a way that's easily understandable. I've seen too many technology leaders that like to use a lot of jargon, because I don't know, maybe they think it's cool but and nobody will tell them that because nobody wants to look like they don't know, all the latest, whether it's ERP, which is an old term, CRM, all of the different tech speak that we use, and just, well, what is it? It's a system that helps you with managing your customer interactions. Okay, now I understand what that is. And so we have to make it easy for people to make good choices for their organization, based on being clear and helping them through that process. Under policy, we haven't talked at all about policy. Most organizations have very few policies in place as it relates to this. I mean, I was thinking back on policies, and this was a pre-COVID conversation that I was having with leaders in the organization, but we didn't really have, one of my old companies, a formal work from home policy, right? And organizations are so nervous about creating policies because it could be legal issues. It could be a lot. It could be they don't want to pay for computers. They don't want to pay for a desk. But think about, if you really didn't have a good work from home policy, how you were scrambling when COVID hit, right? And a lot of companies were scrambling, right? They may not have had, solutions, like we're using today, to interact in groups remotely. And so, AI is going to go fast, and you need to really think about, what are your policies, what are the frameworks, what are your legal and regulatory organizations internally, gonna say about this. And people are just kind of waiting, and I'm not sure what the fire or the emergency is that's going to push some of these functions and organizations to move fast. But it's mark my words, there is going to be a day when people are going to have to deal with this more formally. And I think the larger companies are doing it because they have to, because the risk is too large. But smaller companies, I think are waiting and seeing if they can, copy and paste some of those policies from the larger companies. But it's something everybody needs to be really focused on and consider. Talking about data, I've been working, in and out of data for a very long time, and talking about data governance is about as boring a topic as you could possibly manage. I'm sure people, I'm talking about data governance right now. I'm sure people are going to sleep. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Rich is talking about this. But it's so important to what you're going to do for your organization, because everything that AI does, it starts with the data, and it needs good data, right? I mean, we've how many times have we said in our careers, garbage in, garbage out, and you need to find those people in your organization, and they're there that know your data, right? We had them at my old organizations, and they're so important because they understand the context, they understand that they know what's good, they know what's bad. You need a strategy, a use policy, you need a formal way to govern it. And these are things that you can do now, right? You don't have to wait for the fire. You need to make sure you've got an inventory, use policy. Sometimes when you hit the data issues, and we had this, at one of my old companies, when you're putting in an ERP system, because you find out the data doesn't flow through the system, and then you've got to, go through, Herculean tasks in order to get it to work properly. I'll pause there because I want to give you airtime as well, uh, Davidson.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? It's these things, like you said, aren't the sexiest things, but it's required, right? Because how much data AI is going to use to be able to, to be able to make it run in the back end. So yeah, and do you want to be at the forefront of innovation, right? Do you want to be a trendsetter or someone who's proactively coming up with these policies? Are you going to wait behind and wait to see how everyone else does it, which is what most people do, right? So it's just being thoughtful and just being proactive versus lagging behind. And to your point, if you're a $100 million company to 2 billion, there's such a there's such a big opportunity for you to innovate and perhaps even change the game, right, in terms of innovation. So it's just there's a lot of opportunity here for some of the mid-market companies that are, a bit quicker, a little bit more agile when it comes to these types of decisions. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a huge opportunity for a lot of these companies.
Well, and if you're a technology leader, you don't want to be the technology leader that, the CEO or the CEO or the COO or the CEO are double clicking on your head because you can't go fast enough. And the reason you can't go fast enough is you've got bad data or you've got broken processes, right? And nobody cares about any of that stuff, right? I mean, I can tell you, when I would have meetings with our CEO, with all the other executives, I would just, you look at their eyes, and if it's too technical a conversation, they just glaze over, and I just say, I'd look at him and I'd say, I think we're good, yeah, and he's like, yeah, we're good, and so these are real issues that organizations are going to have to deal with, and you want to get ahead of this, because all of this impacts your ability to go fast. And once people start to see what your competitors are doing with this, and that you can't go fast because you weren't prepared, you know, there'll there'll be a whole new wave of, CIOs replaced, right? Because that's what happens. It's the person that can't do it. And it's most likely not their fault, but nobody cares. And so how do you get the organization ready to push some of these buttons that you need to, so that when the time comes when you're ready, you actually can go fast?
Yeah, that's smart. And yeah, very thoughtful. And sounds like you've done this, working for these huge organizations. You've done a lot of this yourself, right? So there's a lot of people involved, and being technical enough, but also just tying at the end of the day, is tying it back to the business outcomes, right? The business objectives, which is a good takeaway from this as well.
Yeah, and so okay, so we talked about some of the problems, and like any good executive, I'm not going to throw the problems without start talking about some of the potential solutions, right? So it's not just kind of dumping, okay, it's hard, it's tough, it's very sad, and like I said, at the end of the day, people compensate for results, and so how are you going to help your organization, bring these results, bring these new technologies to bear for your organization, timely, cost effectively, in a way that is appropriate for your organization, right? Because it's still, I've worked for organizations that the what was important regardless of the how, and I've worked for organizations that if you delivered the what, but it was scorched earth, you failed as well, right? And so, in today's, business world, the how is many times as important or more important than the what. And so how do you balance that? And it starts with people. It always starts with people, even though we're talking about technology. You've got to have, people that understand, the objectives of the organization, what you're trying to do to upskill your existing employees in these technologies, partnerships with universities, partnerships with organizations, and with leaders, like myself. I'll put a little advertisement in there for me, who can talk you through this and can help build programs and help, future proof, some of what you're trying to do, so that you can be effective. Improving your data management. We've talked, data is at the core of all of this. You need data governance. Most organizations, when I talk to them, they don't really have good data governance, a way to keep, the data fresh, to make sure it's collected properly, but it's also maintained, right? It may be collected properly in the front end, but it may not be, maintained consistently through your databases and through your systems. There's a lot more we can go and say about that, but data, it's so important to what we're doing with AI and with these technologies. Change management and education. I started my career in finance and accounting, and I used to really disregard a lot of these, what I would say softer, types of activities, and change management was one of those ones. I think, maybe until my early 30s, I was kind of like, poo-pooed it. But it's just so important as you're going through these types of activities to make sure, all the money you're spending, and the work that you're doing just sticks, and that it's done effectively. And change management is critical, I think, to making sure that your work sticks, and that the change that you're trying to affect actually happens the way you want it. And that's so important. And then obviously, hitting on the ethical and the privacy concerns. This is back to the policy conversation and making sure that, that part of the organization is aligned. We used to have, I wouldn't say fights, but, conversations with legal and, and with some of the other, parts of the organization. And you can never, reduce risk to zero. You can't do it. Otherwise, no business would be a going concern. But how do you balance your business purpose with risk? And these are important issues that organizations are dealing with. It needs to be thought through as part of this.
As someone you have done a lot of change management, right? There's a lot of competing priorities and there's a lot of people involved. How do you, how are you able to have the trust and the impact to be able to get company-wide adoption, right? Because I'm sure there are a lot of other competing priorities and a lot of people that are invested, or maybe they're attached to certain old ways of doing things.
So there's a number of exercises that you can go through, but part of it is really understanding the influencers in the organizations. I think sometimes projects, and we'll stick with AI. They start maybe as an IT project, and IT in many organizations isn't necessarily highly thought of. And to really truly drive change in an organization, it needs to come from the CEO, and it needs to come from the business unit presidents and the functional leaders. And so making sure that you're getting their hearts and minds as part of this is super important, because, and your major influencers in the organization, because there's people, at lower levels that are huge influencers. Just like in social media, there's people that are huge influencers, and it's finding those people And it's a sales pitch, right? It's making sure they understand, why we're doing it. And a lot of times people don't like to do that work, but it's super important because you're changing the organization, in some instances at the fundamental level. And you need to make sure everybody, or the majority of people go along for the ride. And so it's governance, it's working through those people in the organization, and it's making not just one function's transformation, it's making it for the entire organization, and having, the leaders lead it. And that's critical. Everybody needs to get the win. It can't be IT's win, it can't be finance's win. It needs to be the organization's win. And I think it's a lot of work to do that, but when you do it and get it done and accomplish the objective, it's very fulfilling, and it changes the organization. I mean, when I started at Becton Dickinson, again, this is a testament to the CEO, Vince. I think we were in the 60s on a share price. When I left, I want to say we were above $250 a share, and you don't derive that kind of value, without making fundamental change from an organization standpoint. And so it's possible, it can be done, but you need to bring everybody along for the journey.
Yeah, very valuable. Thank you for those insights. And yeah, the influence, I mean, like with anything, right? The influencers, like don't like you said, it's not always by title, right? Maybe they're just really, they're just really good at the change management piece, or they have a lot of influence, or they have the ear of the CEO, like you said, right? And it's just really so that's really
And,
valuable.
and to
Thank
be
you.
honest, some of the bigger influencers are some of the executive administrative assistants. So it's like you don't know, and so don't people tend to be a little bit, I want to say classist inside an organization. It's
Hmm.
like, it's really who's talking to who is, it's very interesting sometimes what you find when you do some force field and influencer analysis. So I want to say, I've got like two more slides. This is just elements of an AI readiness plan for process and systems modernization. And I always think about it in terms of, where you are from a system standpoint, and how do you plug, AI and some of the tools into this. And, I think there's some philosophies that say, well, you just need to do a whole new, ERP system, which stands for enterprise resource planning, and you need to get rid of all of your old systems and processings or processes. And the reality that's very difficult to do, and not necessarily a path I at least would start, because I try to work with organizations to help them learn into the change. You can't just throw away your old systems, right? I know you'd like to. You've invested money in them. Everybody understands how they work, and there's a way to do this. And the phrase I use is learn your way into this, so that you're not making such a significant change that people, you lose people on the journey. And I think that's so important. And again, a lot of this you can do now, without outside help. But I think it's helpful to have third parties assisting with this, because they can make it go easier, and they can help you really drive towards an end game. But evaluating your systems, making sure you have clear objectives and a problem statement, things like that. Look at your skill and technology gaps, because there always are skill and technology gaps. Understanding where you are and where you want to go from a systems and process standpoint. We talk about process audits and process optimizations. I've seen too many companies, they try to do transformation through a system without necessarily fixing their processes first. And I always advise to try to get your processes right first before you put in a system, because doing it afterwards kind of defeats the point of the system. You just have a new system with bad processes embedded in it. And so, again, you can read the different areas and getting into actually implementing the AI. And these are things that, if you're going down this path, you definitely want to consider, looking at regulatory compliance, ethical use, and then, looking at partnerships and collaborations with people that know this, maybe better than you do. And really it comes down to, is this something, that's part of your strategy? And, are you really ready to move forward, at speed to do this? Because your competitors may be doing this, right? And so, looking at the competitive landscape and the threat that may be out there, I think is important, at least as a conversation for your organization.
I mean, you've been on the other side for a decent chunk of your career as well. Like, how do you think about vendor selection, right? Because there's just so many technology vendors out there that it's almost it seems daunting.
I mean, you've gotta find somebody, who knows the landscape. It could be somebody like me. It could be, a trusted consultant. They're out there, but you've got to find somebody who you're going to listen to and who has a point of view. The technology partners, I've worked with almost every, technology delivery company, out there, and there's just like anything else, there's good ones, and there's less good ones, right? I wouldn't say there's bad ones, but you kind of get what you pay for. At the same time, inside of every technology organization, they've got an A team, a B team, a C team, a D team, and even lower than that. And so having people that can, kind of uh, evaluate the quality of personnel that they're bringing, and evaluating the relationship, if you're an $800 million company, you're probably not going to want to go to one of the largest outsourcers or technology partners because you're small to them, and you're probably not going to get as good a service or the best team as their top 25 customers. And so you need to be realistic in your evaluation and what's important to you. Do you, do you want a name brand and maybe get, the D team, or do you want maybe a smaller company where you're the prize, right? Where they really care and they're going to bring their best people to bear. And those are all things that you need to consider as you're going through this. And I've done, worked with outside legal and internal legal on many outsourcing and technology agreements. And, these are all things that you talk about, you discuss and work through. But as a leader in an organization that's evaluating this, there are definitely things that you need to consider and have, laid out on your roadmap.
Yeah, that's really good advice, right? Obviously, everyone knows the big four, if they have multi-billion, the Fortune 50, Fortune 100 are going to be more of a priority. So that's a good call out that, do you want the D squad or the E or the Z squad,
Yeah.
working? It's yeah. So uh, really good insights because you have been on the other side for, and you've done
Oh
this
yeah.
so many times.
Yeah, and it's just it's a very small. I mean, it's a big industry, but it's a small industry. I mean, everybody knows everybody, right? I mean, you looked at my LinkedIn and some of my contacts and who I'm connected to, and they're all really good people, right? And they want to do a good job, but it's like, the bigger you get, the harder it is to kind of focus, especially on some of the smaller companies. And, it's a fight. It is a fight for the people that actually understand how to do this. And it's important that you get people that can also, work with your organization. My job is not to as an advisor. My job is not to force you to adapt to my culture. My job is to understand your culture so that I can help find people that can work with you to make you successful as an organization to achieve your strategy and objectives. right? And that's a very important nuance as you go through this, because every company's culture, whether it's, Disney or Becton Dickinson or Unilever or McDonald's or any of the other companies that I've worked with, their cultures are all different. And you have to adapt and understand their culture because that's critical for the success of the program.
So there was one more, right? One
One
more
more.
slide.
So key takeaways. So I think we've talked about a lot of this, which is good. Obviously, education and awareness. You can't do enough of this. Find, outside educators. There's a lot of, the challenge I think I have today with some of the content that's out there. There's a lot of what I would call AI imposters. People have, are out there talking about AI that don't necessarily have the creds to do it. And to be honest, somebody who's been doing, and been involved in the technology for, 20 or 30 years would probably call me an AI imposter. And, I get my ability because I know a lot of the other systems. So am I as deep understanding AI? Probably not, right? To be absolutely fair, but I do understand, kind of the core concepts and how the technology would be combined and integrated with the legacy environments, and that's really, a big part of my skill set and being able to drive that change into organizations. And so, just beware and test them on, what they know and what they don't know, because like I said, I've run across a lot of people that are, when you go below the surface, they really don't understand the technology and what it can do. Again, think strategically about it, and about your technology. Make sure you understand, and are self-aware about your organization's readiness. Um, get help. Don't do this by yourself. Get people that you can trust. Engage with networks. It doesn't have to necessarily be people that you pay, but, and then, not every company is going to be an innovator, but, this technology and where this is going, I think is going to push companies to do more, than maybe what they thought was possible or did previously. Um, and I'm sure there's many more. I don't know if, anybody online has asked any questions. So, we've got a couple minutes left. Maybe if there are any questions, we could answer those.
Yeah, feel free to write questions. We had a comment from Abraham Jackson who said, excellent point, Rich. Accessible language is critical across tech. There's an opportunity to educate on new vocabulary associated with AI.
So Abraham, we agree. So,
Yeah, so we have 10 people right now watching through the live stream on the LinkedIn Live. Just to, yeah, there was a lot of good, so thanks for doing this, Rich. A lot of good takeaways. It sounds like having a strong data governance slash data policy approach would be helpful, right? Because obviously it's not going away, it's coming faster.
right.
Being able to understand who the key influencers from a change management standpoint to be able to implement this, right? To be able to help, obviously you've done it very well at BD and you've seen it grow tremendously. So there's obviously good financial implications of implementing and being at the forefront and leveraging to make the organization more profitable, more efficient, or just better, right? Leveraging technology. And then I'm also hearing just not being afraid to just and try different things and experiment and just be open and curious with a lot of the new technologies. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and experimentation doesn't have to be expensive, right? I mean, you can get, for $20 a month, ChatGPT 4.0, right? So, there's ways to do it, in a cost-effective way. And I would say also, don't, one of the things that I did previously was, reverse mentoring. If you're a more senior, employee, talk to some of the, quote unquote kids. I have two daughters, 26 and 29. I'm always, talking to them about, what are you seeing in your jobs? What are you seeing from a technology standpoint? What's working, what's not. So, definitely, spanning the generational gap is important to understanding, what people are doing, because how I work is probably going to be different than a millennial or, Gen Zer.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, it's a mutual beneficial relationship, right? And JS said, thanks, Richard and David. And Abraham said, thanks, Rich and David. Great lunch and learn.
All right, cool.
All
No,
right,
thank
everyone.
you, and thanks, Valenta, for allowing me the opportunity to chat with everybody today, and hopefully we push this out and more people can view it.
Amazing. All right. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Richard and I, Rich and I. Um, yep, we will. You can rewatch this if this is interesting to anyone. You could send this link to the live stream to any of your peers or colleagues, anyone that you think would find this valuable. And stay tuned. We'll have other Valenta Insights coming up. We have Nathan Morris coming up next. And we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.